Imagine waking up in a world where your morning routine could literally be your last, where the smell of burning incense mingles with the stench of death, and where a single wrong word could see you thrown to the lions before sunset. Tonight, we're traveling back 4,000 years to the most dangerous civilization in human history, ancient Babylon. Close your eyes, get comfortable, and let me tell you why you wouldn't last a single day in this forgotten empire. But first, if you're ready for the most immersive historical journey you've ever experienced, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Because tonight, S Story will change how you see the ancient world forever. Before we begin this epic journey through time, take a moment to like this video if you're ready to discover the shocking truths about daily life in ancient Babylon. Your support helps us create these detailed historical adventures that transport you to another world entirely. Now let's step through the gates of time. The first rays of sunlight pierce through the narrow window of your mud brick dwelling, and already you can hear the bustling sounds of Babylon awakening. But this isn't the peaceful morning you're accustomed to in the modern world. The year is 1750 BCE, and you've somehow found yourself in the heart of King Hammurabi's empire, a place where survival is unguaranteed, even for the wealthy. Your eyes flutter open to a world that operates by rules so foreign, so brutal, that your modern sensibilities would be shattered within hours. The air is thick with smoke from countless fires, cooking fires, ceremonial fires, and yes, execution fires. The smell hits you immediately. A mixture of roasted barley, animal dung used for fuel, and something else. Something that makes your stomach turn. It's the smell of a civilization built on the edge of life and death. As you sit up on your reed mat, forget about comfortable mattresses. Your body already aches from the hard surface. But physical discomfort is the least of your worries. In ancient Babylon, every decision you make, every word you speak, every person you encounter could determine whether you see another sunset. Let's start with something as simple as getting dressed. In your modern life, you throw on whatever clothes you want, expressing your personality and style. But in Babylon, your clothing immediately broadcasts your social status, your profession, and most importantly, your rights under the law. Choose wrong, and you could be accused of impersonating someone of higher status, a crime punishable by death. The wealthy wear fine linen and wool, dyed in expensive colors like purple and crimson. Their garments are adorned with intricate patterns and sometimes even gold thread. But if you're not wealthy, and statistically, you wouldn't be, you're limited to rough, undyed wool or linen. The color of your clothes, the way you wear them, even the style of your belt, all communicate your place in society's rigid hierarchy. But here's where it gets truly dangerous. Babylon operated under one of the world's first comprehensive legal codes, the Code of Hammurabi. This wasn't just a set of guidelines. It was a brutal system of justice that made no allowances for ignorance or good intentions. There were nearly 300 laws covering everything from business transactions to family relationships, and the punishments were swift and severe. Your stomach growls, reminding you that you need to eat. In the modern world, you might grab a quick breakfast without much thought. But in ancient Babylon, even your morning meal is fraught with danger. First, you need to understand that food safety as we know it doesn't exist. There's no refrigeration, no understanding of bacteria, no health inspectors. The bread you're about to eat was made with grain that might have been stored for months in conditions that would horrify a modern health inspector. Rats, insects, and mold are constant companions to stored food. The water you drink comes from the Euphrates River, the same river where people bathe, wash their clothes, and dispose of waste. Waterborne diseases like cholera, typhoid, and dysentery are common killers, but you have no choice. You must drink to survive. As you make your way to the local food vendor, you notice the careful dance of social interaction happening around you. People don't just buy and sell. They perform elaborate rituals of respect and deference. A commoner must approach a merchant of higher status in a specific way, using particular phrases and gestures. Get it wrong, and you're not just embarrassed. You could be accused of showing disrespect, which under Hammurabi's code could result in physical punishment. The food itself tells a story of survival. Barley is the staple grain, often made into a thick porridge or flat bread. If you're lucky, you might have some dates, onions, or garlic to add flavor. Meat is a luxury reserved for special occasions or the wealthy. Fish from the river is more common, but again, without proper preservation methods, it's a gamble every time you eat it. But let's say you manage to navigate the social complexities and obtain your breakfast without offense. Now you face another challenge. The act of eating itself is governed by strict social rules. Who you eat with, where you sit, how you hold your food, what you say during the meal. All of these are regulated by custom and law. After your precarious breakfast, it's time to work. In ancient Babylon, your profession isn't just your job, it's your identity, your social position, and often your death sentence. Let's imagine you're assigned to one of the most common professions, construction worker. Babylon is a city constantly building and rebuilding, with massive ziggurats reaching toward the heavens and elaborate palaces showcasing the king's power. But construction in ancient times is nothing like the regulated, safety-conscious industry of today. You're working with primitive tools, copper and bronze implements that break easily, wooden scaffolding that's held together with rope and prayer. There are no safety regulations, no protective equipment, no workers' compensation if you're injured. If you fall from a height, if a stone crushes your foot, if you're struck by falling debris, you're on your own. The working conditions are brutal. You labor from sunrise to sunset under the scorching Mesopotamian sun, with only brief breaks for water and food. The temperature regularly exceeds 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and there's no shade on the construction sites. Heat exhaustion and heat stroke are constant threats, but showing weakness could cost you your job, and without work, you starve. But the physical dangers are only part of the story. The social dynamics of the workplace are equally treacherous. Babylon's society is strictly hierarchical, with complex relationships between masters and servants, skilled craftsmen and laborers, overseers and workers. A single perceived slight, a moment of insubordination, or even an accidental mistake could result in severe punishment. Under Hammurabi's code, if a builder constructs a house that collapses and kills the owner, the builder is put to death. If the collapse kills the owner's son, the builder's son is executed. This isn't just theoretical. These laws were actively enforced. Every day at work, you're literally building your own potential death sentence. Perhaps you think you'd be safer in commerce, buying and selling goods in Babylon's famous markets. After all, how dangerous could trading be? The answer would shock you. Babylon was a major trading hub, with merchants traveling from as far as India and Anatolia to exchange goods. The markets were filled with exotic spices, precious metals, fine textiles, and rare stones. But this wealth attracted not just legitimate traders, but also thieves, con artists, and corrupt officials. The Code of Hammurabi had specific laws governing trade, and they were unforgiving. If you were caught selling goods using false weights or measures, you could be thrown into the river, essentially a death sentence, as few people could swim. If you were accused of stealing, even if you were innocent, you might be subjected to trial by ordeal, where you'd be thrown into the river and your guilt or innocence determined by whether you drowned. But let's say you're honest in your dealings. You still face the challenge of Babylon's complex currency system. There's no standardized money as we know it. Instead, trade is conducted through a combination of silver by weight, barley by volume, and various trade goods. Calculating fair exchanges requires mathematical skills that most people don't possess, making it easy to be cheated or to accidentally cheat others. The social aspects of commerce are equally complex. Different classes of people have different rights and protections under the law. A noble who cheats a commoner faces a different punishment than a commoner who cheats a noble. Understanding these distinctions isn't just important for business, it's essential for survival. Chapter 5. The Perils of Family Life. Sounds of children playing, women talking, domestic activities. You might think that family life would provide a refuge from the dangers of public life in Babylon. Unfortunately, even the most intimate relationships are governed by laws that would seem harsh and alien to modern sensibilities. Marriage in ancient Babylon isn't primarily about love or companionship. It is an economic and social contract with serious legal implications. The Code of Hammurabi contains dozens of laws governing marriage, divorce, inheritance, and family relationships, and many of these laws carry severe penalties for violations. For instance, if a woman is accused of adultery, she and her alleged lover could be tied together and thrown into the river. If a son strikes his father, his hand could be cut off. If a woman causes the death of another woman's unborn child, her own daughter could be executed in retaliation. But even beyond these extreme punishments, daily family life is filled with tensions and dangers that don't exist in the modern world. Infant mortality rates are extremely high. Perhaps 30 to 40% of children die before their 5th birthday. Diseases that are easily treatable today, infections, fevers, digestive problems, are often fatal. Women face particular dangers. Childbirth is extremely risky without modern medical knowledge and equipment. Many women die in labor, and those who survive often face complications that affect their health for the rest of their lives. The average life expectancy for women is significantly lower than for men, partly due to the risks of childbearing. Religion in ancient Babylon isn't a personal choice or private matter. It is a public obligation with serious consequences for non-compliance. The city is dominated by massive ziggurats, temple complexes that serve not just as places of worship, but as economic and political centers. The Babylonians worship a complex pantheon of gods, each with specific requirements and expectations. Marduk, the chief god, must be honored with elaborate rituals and expensive offerings. Ishtar, the goddess of love and war, demands her own ceremonies. Failing to participate in religious observances isn't just socially unacceptable. It is seen as a threat to the entire community's well-being. But participating in religious life brings its own dangers. Temple rituals often involve animal sacrifice, and sometimes human sacrifice during particularly important ceremonies. As a commoner, you might be selected for certain dangerous religious duties, like serving as a temple prostitute or participating in fertility rituals that could result in injury or death. The priests wield enormous power in Babylonian society. They interpret omens, predict the future, and advise the king on important decisions. Crossing a priest or failing to show proper respect could result in being declared cursed or impure, effectively making you an outcast from society. The legal system of ancient Babylon is both sophisticated and terrifying. The Code of Hammurabi represents one of humanity's first attempts at comprehensive written law, but its approach to justice is based on retaliation rather than rehabilitation. The famous principle of an eye for an eye isn't just a saying. It is literally how justice works. If you injure someone, you can expect to receive the same injury in return. If you kill someone, you'll be executed. If you steal, you might have your hand cut off. There's no concept of intent, no consideration of circumstances, no possibility of appeal. But the punishments vary dramatically based on social class. If a noble injures a commoner, he might pay a fine. If a commoner injures a noble, he could be executed. If a slave injures anyone, the punishment is always severe. Understanding your place in this hierarchy isn't just important for social interaction. It is essential for legal survival. Trials are public spectacles, often held in the city square with crowds of onlookers. Evidence is presented, but the standards of proof are very different from modern legal systems. Accusations from respected citizens carry more weight than evidence. Confessions extracted under torture are considered valid. Trial by ordeal, where the accused is subjected to dangerous tests to determine guilt or innocence, is common. Chapter 8. The constant threat of war, sounds of marching armies, weapons clashing, war horns. Ancient Babylon exists in a state of almost constant warfare. The city-state must defend itself against neighboring kingdoms, nomadic raiders, and internal rebellions. As a resident of Babylon, you're not just a civilian observer of these conflicts, you're a potential participant. All able-bodied men can be conscripted into military service at any time. There's no professional army as we understand it today. Instead, farmers, craftsmen, and merchants are expected to take up arms when needed. Military training is minimal, equipment is basic, and survival depends more on luck than skill. The weapons of the time, bronze swords, wooden spears, simple bows, are primitive by modern standards, but deadly nonetheless. Battles are brutal, close-quarters affairs where death comes quickly and often. There are no rules of engagement, no Geneva Convention, no protection for non-combatants. But even if you're not directly involved in fighting, war affects every aspect of life in Babylon. Enemy armies might besiege the city, cutting off food supplies and trade routes. Refugees from conquered territories flood into the city, straining resources and creating social tensions. The constant threat of attack means that normal life is always subject to disruption. Perhaps the greatest threat to your survival in ancient Babylon isn't violence or legal punishment, it's disease. Without modern medical knowledge, sanitation systems, or effective treatments, illnesses that are minor inconveniences today could easily kill you in the ancient world. The city's sanitation is primitive at best. Human waste is often disposed of in the streets or nearby rivers. Garbage accumulates in public areas, attracting rats and insects that spread disease. The water supply is contaminated with bacteria and parasites that cause dysentery, cholera, and other waterborne illnesses. Medical treatment is a combination of herbal remedies, religious rituals, and procedures that often do more harm than good. Physicians have some knowledge of anatomy and can perform basic surgery, but they have no understanding of infection, bacteria, or proper sterilization. A simple cut could become infected and lead to death from sepsis. Mental illness is poorly understood and often attributed to demonic possession or divine punishment. Treatment might involve exorcism rituals, physical restraint, or even execution if the person is deemed dangerous to the community. Epidemics sweep through the city regularly, killing thousands. Smallpox, plague, typhoid, and other diseases spread rapidly in the crowded, unsanitary conditions. When an epidemic strikes, there's no effective treatment, no quarantine procedures, no understanding of how to prevent transmission. People die in massive numbers, and survivors often face long-term health consequences. Understanding Babylon's rigid social hierarchy isn't just academically interesting, it's essential for survival. Your position in society determines your rights, your protections under the law, your economic opportunities, and even your chances of survival. At the top of the hierarchy is the king, considered a representative of the gods on earth. Below him are the nobles, wealthy landowners, high-ranking priests, and government officials. These people have extensive rights and protections. They can own land, participate in trade, and expect favorable treatment from the legal system. The middle class consists of skilled craftsmen, merchants, and lower-ranking priests. They have some rights and protections, but they're always vulnerable to the whims of those above them. A noble can destroy a craftsman's livelihood with a single accusation or complaint. At the bottom of the hierarchy are the commoners, farmers, laborers, and servants. They have few rights and little protection. They can be punished severely for minor offenses, and they have little recourse when wronged by those of higher status. Below even the commoners are the slaves. Slavery is a fundamental part of Babylonian society, and slaves are considered property rather than people. They can be bought, sold, beaten, or killed at their owner's discretion. Many slaves are prisoners of war or people who have fallen into debt but some are born into slavery and know no other life. As the sun sets over Babylon, new dangers emerge. The city at night is a very different place from the bustling marketplace of the day. Without electric lighting, the streets are dark and treacherous. Oil lamps and torches provide some illumination, but they're expensive and not everyone can afford them. Crime increases dramatically after dark. Thieves and robbers take advantage of the darkness to prey on unwary travelers. The City Watch exists, but it's small and not particularly effective. If you're attacked, you're largely on your own. But crime isn't the only danger. The darkness conceals other threats. Wild animals that venture into the city from the surrounding wilderness. Unstable buildings that might collapse. Open sewers and construction pits that could cause serious injury to someone walking in the dark. The social rules that govern daytime interaction become even more complex at night. Certain areas of the city are off limits to people of lower social status. Being found in the wrong place at the wrong time could result in accusations of theft, espionage, or other serious crimes. Religious beliefs also make the night more dangerous. Many Babylonians believe that evil spirits and demons are more active after dark. Rituals and ceremonies designed to ward off these supernatural threats are common, but they can also be dangerous for participants. The economy of ancient Babylon operates on principles that would be completely foreign to modern people. There's no social safety net, no unemployment insurance, no retirement savings. If you can't work, you don't eat. If you can't pay your debts, you become a slave. The concept of debt is particularly dangerous in Babylonian society. If you borrow money or goods and can't repay them, you or your family members can be sold into slavery to satisfy the debt. This isn't just a theoretical possibility. It's a common occurrence that affects thousands of people. Employment is often seasonal and uncertain. Farmers depend on the annual flooding of the Euphrates River to irrigate their crops. If the flood is too small, crops fail and people starve. If it's too large, it destroys homes and infrastructure. There's no crop insurance, no disaster relief, no government assistance. Trade is the lifeblood of Babylon's economy, but it's also extremely risky. Merchants who travel to distant lands face bandits, hostile tribes, dangerous weather, and political instability. A single failed trading expedition can bankrupt a family and force them into slavery. The experience of women in ancient Babylon is particularly harsh by modern standards. While women have some rights, they can own property, engage in business, and initiate divorce under certain circumstances. They face unique dangers and restrictions that make survival even more challenging. Marriage is often arranged by families for economic or political reasons, with little regard for the woman's preferences. Once married, a woman is expected to produce children, preferably sons. Failure to bear children, especially male children, can result in divorce, social ostracism, or worse. Childbirth is extremely dangerous without modern medical knowledge and equipment. Many women die in labor, and those who survive often face long-term health problems. The high infant mortality rate means that women often endure multiple pregnancies and births, each one a potential death sentence. Women's legal status is complex and often contradictory. While they can own property and engage in business, they're also subject to severe punishments for adultery, disobedience, or other perceived moral failings. The Code of Hammurabi contains numerous laws specifically governing women's behavior, with harsh penalties for violations. As our imaginary day in ancient Babylon draws to a close, you might think you've survived the worst. But in truth, every moment in this ancient civilization is fraught with danger. The simple act of going to sleep brings new risks: fire from oil lamps, structural collapse of poorly built buildings, attacks by criminals or wild animals. Even in sleep, you're not safe. Disease can strike at any time, turning a minor illness into a fatal condition overnight. Political upheaval can transform you from a free citizen into a slave or refugee. Natural disasters, floods, earthquakes, storms, can destroy everything you've worked to build. The psychological toll of living in such a dangerous environment would be enormous. The constant stress of survival, the ever-present threat of violence, the rigid social restrictions, and the harsh legal system would create a level of anxiety and fear that modern people can barely imagine. But perhaps most challenging of all would be the complete absence of hope for improvement. In the modern world, we believe that life can get better, that progress is possible, that future generations will have opportunities we don't. In ancient Babylon, the social order is seen as divinely ordained and unchangeable. Your position in life is determined by birth, and there's little possibility of advancement or escape. Let's delve deeper into the heart of Babylonian commerce, the slave market. This wasn't a hidden, shameful aspect of society, but a central, openly acknowledged institution that would horrify modern sensibilities. As you walk through the market square, you witness scenes that reveal the true brutality of ancient economic systems. Slaves are displayed like livestock, examined by potential buyers who check their teeth, muscles, and overall health. These aren't just prisoners of war from distant lands. Many are former citizens of Babylon itself, people who fell into debt, committed crimes, or simply found themselves on the wrong side of political upheaval. The slave trade operates with cold efficiency. Children are separated from parents, husbands from wives, with no consideration for family bonds. A skilled craftsman might find himself sold to work in dangerous mines, while a former merchant's daughter could be purchased for domestic service in a household where her education and refinement mean nothing. What makes this even more chilling is how easily you could join their ranks. A failed business venture, an accusation from someone of higher status, an inability to pay taxes during a bad harvest. Any of these could transform you from observer to commodity in a matter of days. The prices vary dramatically based on age, skill, and physical condition. A young, healthy male might cost as much as a small house, while an older slave or one with disabilities might be sold for the price of a few sheep. But regardless of price, all slaves share the same fate. They become property, with no rights, no protection, and no hope of legal recourse. The massive ziggurat dominates Babylon's skyline, but its imposing presence represents more than just architectural achievement. It is a constant reminder of the religious obligations that could cost you your life. These stepped pyramids, reaching toward the heavens, require constant maintenance and expansion, demanding enormous resources and human sacrifice. Working on ziggurat construction is considered both an honor and a death sentence. The honor comes from serving the gods directly. The death sentence comes from the working conditions. Men labor at heights that would terrify modern construction workers, using primitive equipment and no safety measures. Falls are common and almost always fatal, but the physical dangers are only part of the story. The religious significance of these structures means that every aspect of construction is governed by ritual and ceremony. Workers must undergo purification rites, follow strict dietary restrictions, and participate in religious observances that can be as dangerous as the construction work itself. The priests who oversee construction wield absolute authority. They interpret omens to determine when work should proceed, which materials should be used, and how the structure should be oriented. A priest's displeasure could result in a worker being declared cursed, effectively ending their participation in society. The ziggurat also serves as an economic center, with vast storehouses containing tribute from across the empire. These wealth repositories attract thieves and raiders, making the area around the ziggurat particularly dangerous. Guards patrol constantly, and they have orders to kill first and ask questions later. If you possess the rare skill of literacy, you might think yourself fortunate to work as a scribe. After all, scribes are respected members of society, essential for record-keeping, correspondence, and legal documentation. But this prestigious position comes with its own unique dangers and pressures. Scribes are responsible for recording everything from business transactions to legal proceedings to royal decrees. A single error in transcription could have catastrophic consequences. Misrecord a legal judgment, and you could be held responsible for any resulting injustice. Make a mistake in a business contract, and you might be liable for financial losses. The pressure for accuracy is enormous, but the tools and conditions make errors almost inevitable. You're working with reed styluses on clay tablets, creating cuneiform characters that must be precise and legible. The clay must be kept at exactly the right moisture level. Too dry and it cracks, too wet and the characters blur. You're often working by flickering oil lamplight, straining your eyes to see the tiny marks clearly. But perhaps most dangerous of all is the content you're required to record. Scribes often serve as witnesses to sensitive political discussions, business negotiations, and legal proceedings. This knowledge makes them valuable and vulnerable. A scribe who knows too much about the wrong people might find themselves silenced permanently. The education required to become a scribe is itself a trial by ordeal. Students spend years memorizing hundreds of cuneiform signs, learning multiple languages, and mastering complex mathematical calculations. Physical punishment for mistakes is common and severe. Many students don't survive the rigorous training, either dying from the harsh treatment or abandoning their studies to avoid it. Long-distance trade offers the possibility of great wealth, but it is essentially a form of legalized gambling where the stakes are your life and the lives of your family. Merchants who organize trading expeditions face dangers that would make modern extreme sports seem tame by comparison. The journey itself is fraught with peril. Caravans travel for months across deserts, mountains, and hostile territories. Bandits attack regularly, and there's no law enforcement beyond the city walls. Weather can be deadly. Sandstorms that last for days, flash floods that wash away entire caravans, extreme temperatures that kill both humans and animals. But even if you survive the physical journey, you face the challenge of negotiating in foreign markets where you don't understand the language, customs, or legal systems. A misunderstood gesture could be interpreted as an insult, leading to violence or imprisonment. Different cities have different weights and measures, different currencies, different standards of quality for goods. The economic risks are as dangerous as the physical ones. A merchant typically invests everything they own in a single expedition. If the caravan is lost to bandits, weather, or political upheaval, the merchant and their family face bankruptcy and potential slavery. There's no insurance, no government bailouts, no social safety net. Success in trade requires not just business acumen, but also skills in diplomacy, warfare, navigation, and survival. Merchants must be able to fight off attackers, negotiate with hostile tribes, navigate by the stars, and survive in harsh environments with limited supplies. Medical practice in ancient Babylon combines genuine healing knowledge with religious ritual and dangerous superstition. As a healer, you walk a tightrope between helping your patients and avoiding accusations of witchcraft or incompetence. The medical knowledge available is limited, but not entirely without merit. Babylonian healers understand some basic anatomy, can set broken bones, and know the medicinal properties of various plants and minerals. They can perform simple surgeries and have developed some effective treatments for common ailments. However, much of medical practice is based on the belief that illness is caused by divine displeasure or demonic possession. Treatment often involves elaborate rituals, incantations, and ceremonies designed to appease angry gods or drive out evil spirits. These rituals can be as dangerous as the diseases they're meant to cure. The social position of healers is precarious. Success brings respect and wealth, but failure can result in accusations of incompetence or malicious intent. If a patient dies, the healer might be held responsible and face severe punishment. If a patient recovers but attributes their healing to divine intervention rather than medical treatment, the healer receives no credit. The Code of Hammurabi contains specific laws governing medical practice. If a physician performs surgery and the patient dies, the physician's hand might be cut off. This creates a powerful incentive to avoid treating seriously ill patients, which means that those who most need medical care are least likely to receive it. Agriculture forms the foundation of Babylonian civilization, but farming in ancient Mesopotamia is a constant battle against forces beyond human control. As a farmer, your survival depends on the annual flooding of the Euphrates River, the cooperation of your neighbors, and the whims of nature and politics. The irrigation system that makes agriculture possible in this arid region is a marvel of ancient engineering, but it's also a source of constant conflict and danger. Canals must be maintained, water rights must be respected, and the complex system of dikes and channels requires coordinated effort from entire communities. Disputes over water rights are common and often violent. If your neighbor diverts too much water to his fields, your crops might fail and your family might starve. But confronting him could lead to a legal battle you can't afford to lose, or even to physical violence that could result in death or injury. The annual flood cycle determines everything about your life. Too little flooding means drought, crop failure, and famine. Too much flooding destroys homes, washes away stored grain, and can kill livestock and people. You have no way to predict or control these floods. You can only hope and pray that the gods will be merciful. Even in good years, farming is backbreaking labor. You work from dawn to dusk with primitive tools, plowing with wooden implements pulled by oxen, harvesting grain by hand with bronze sickles, threshing wheat by having animals trample it. The work is physically demanding and dangerous. Injuries from tools and animals are common and often serious. Skilled craftsmen occupy a middle position in Babylonian society, respected for their abilities but vulnerable to economic and political pressures. As an artisan, you possess valuable skills, but you also dependent on the patronage of wealthy customers who can withdraw their support at any time. Different crafts carry different levels of prestige and danger. Metal workers, especially those who work with bronze and precious metals, are highly valued but face constant exposure to toxic fumes and dangerous working conditions. The furnaces required for metal working reach extremely high temperatures and pose constant fire hazards. Potters create essential household items, but they're also vulnerable to economic downturns. When times are hard, people make do with old pottery rather than buying new pieces. A potter's livelihood can disappear overnight if wealthy patrons decide to economize. Textile workers, many of whom are women, face their own unique challenges. The work is tedious and physically demanding, requiring long hours of repetitive motion that can cause permanent injury to hands and backs. The materials, wool, linen, and dyes, can cause allergic reactions and respiratory problems. All artisans face the challenge of obtaining raw materials. Metals must be imported from distant regions, often through dangerous trade routes. Clay for pottery must be of the right quality and properly prepared. Dyes for textiles come from rare plants and minerals that are expensive and difficult to obtain. Military service in ancient Babylon isn't a career choice, it is an obligation that can be imposed on any able-bodied man at any time. The army is composed primarily of conscripted farmers, craftsmen, and laborers who have little military training and poor equipment. Training is minimal and brutal. New recruits are expected to learn weapon handling, formation fighting, and military discipline in a matter of weeks. Those who can't keep up are often beaten or abandoned. There's no understanding of the psychological effects of combat, no support for what we would now recognize as post-traumatic stress. The weapons and armor available to common soldiers are primitive and often inadequate. Bronze spears and swords break easily in combat. Leather armor provides minimal protection against enemy weapons. Shields are made of wood and leather, offering some defense but adding significant weight that exhausts soldiers during long marches. Battle itself is terrifying and chaotic. There are no rules of engagement, no protection for prisoners, no medical corps to treat the wounded. Combat is hand-to-hand, brutal, and often decisive within minutes. Survival depends more on luck than skill, and death comes quickly and violently. Even if you survive battle, the aftermath brings new dangers. Wounded soldiers receive minimal medical care and often die from infections or blood loss. Victory brings the opportunity to loot enemy dead, but it also means participating in the massacre of prisoners and civilians that typically follows ancient battles. The priesthood offers power and prestige, but it also demands absolute commitment to religious duties that can be physically and psychologically demanding. Priests serve as intermediaries between the human and divine worlds, a role that carries enormous responsibility and constant pressure. Religious ceremonies often involve dangerous activities. Animal sacrifice requires skill with sharp knives and the ability to handle large, frightened animals. Some rituals involve the consumption of substances that can cause hallucinations or poisoning. Fire ceremonies pose obvious risks of burns and accidental blazes. The political aspects of religious service are equally dangerous. Priests interpret omens and divine will, advising kings and nobles on important decisions. A wrong interpretation could lead to military defeat, economic disaster, or political upheaval, and the priest who gave the advice would be held responsible. The lifestyle required of priests is austere and demanding. Many religious positions require celibacy, fasting, and other forms of self-denial that can damage physical and mental health. Priests must maintain ritual purity, which involves complex rules about diet, behavior, and social interaction. The competition within the priesthood is intense and sometimes deadly. Higher positions offer greater power and wealth, but they also attract ambitious individuals who might use violence or intrigue to advance their careers. Temple politics can be as dangerous as royal court intrigue. Even the wealthy and powerful face unique dangers in Babylonian society. Nobles must navigate complex political relationships, maintain their status through conspicuous consumption, and constantly guard against rivals who might seek to destroy them. Wealth brings responsibility as well as privilege. Nobles are expected to support public works, sponsor religious ceremonies, and provide for their extended households. Failure to meet these obligations can result in loss of status and political power. The political intrigue of noble society is constant and deadly. Alliances shift rapidly, and yesterday's ally might become tomorrow's enemy. Nobles must be skilled in diplomacy, able to read subtle social cues, and prepared to defend themselves against both open attacks and subtle undermining. Marriage among nobles is primarily political, designed to create alliances and consolidate power. Personal happiness is secondary to political advantage, and marriages can be dissolved if political circumstances change. Children are raised as political assets, their marriages arranged to benefit the family's interests. The pressure to maintain appearances is enormous and expensive. Nobles must dress in fine clothing, live in elaborate houses, and entertain lavishly. The cost of maintaining noble status can bankrupt families, forcing them to take dangerous risks to maintain their income. As our extended journey through ancient Babylon draws to its conclusion, we must confront the ultimate reality of life in this ancient civilization. Death was always near, always unpredictable, and often brutal. The average life expectancy was perhaps 30 to 35 years, meaning that most people died before reaching what we would consider middle age. Infant mortality was so high that families didn't name children until they had survived their first year. Women frequently died in childbirth. Men died from accidents or violence. And people of all ages succumbed to diseases that are easily treatable today. But perhaps more challenging than the constant threat of death was the absence of individual agency. Your life was determined by forces beyond your control. The social class you were born into, the whims of rulers and nobles, the annual flood cycle, the outbreak of war or disease. Personal choice, as we understand it, barely existed. The psychological toll of living in such a world would be enormous. The constant stress, the rigid social restrictions, the ever-present threat of violence, and the complete absence of privacy or personal freedom would create levels of anxiety and depression that would be considered pathological by modern standards. Yet somehow, people not only survived but created one of history's most influential civilizations. They developed writing, mathematics, astronomy, and law. They built magnificent cities, created beautiful art, and told stories that still resonate today. Their resilience in the face of overwhelming challenges is both humbling and inspiring. As we finally leave the dangerous streets of ancient Babylon behind and return to our modern world, we carry with us a profound appreciation for how far human civilization has progressed. The comfortable bed you sleep in tonight, the clean water you drink, the medical care available to you, the legal protections you enjoy, all of these are gifts from thousands of years of human struggle and progress. The people of ancient Babylon faced their harsh world with the same hopes, fears, and dreams that motivate us today. They loved their families, pursued their ambitions, and tried to create better lives for their children. In doing so, they laid the foundations for everything that followed. Their world was brutal and unforgiving, but it was also the crucible in which human civilization was forged. Every law we follow, every scientific principle we apply, every artistic tradition we cherish has roots that extend back to ancient Mesopotamia and the brave people who built the first cities in human history. So as you drift off to sleep, safe and secure in ways that ancient peoples could never imagine, remember their sacrifice and their achievement. Remember that you are the inheritor of their struggles, the beneficiary of their innovations, and the continuation of their story. Sleep well, knowing that you have survived, if only in imagination, one of history's most challenging civilizations. Rest peacefully in the knowledge that tomorrow you will wake up in a world that, for all its problems, offers opportunities and securities that would have seemed miraculous to the people of ancient Babylon. The long night of ancient history has given way to the dawn of the modern world, but the courage, intelligence, and determination of our ancestors continues to light our way forward into an uncertain but hopeful future.